You see it everywhere, right? Net zero targets, ambitious climate goals. But it begs a really important question for businesses. How do we actually measure our impact? I mean, with everyone making these big promises, how do we know who's actually making a difference? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today by diving into the essential rules of carbon accounting. Here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll talk about why we need a common language in the first place. Then we'll introduce the global standard that provides it. We'll peek inside that protocol, see how it fits into a much bigger ecosystem. And finally, we'll wrap up with why all of this is so incredibly important. All right, let's jump right in. Section 1, a common language and the absolute need for consistency. This is really the million-dollar question, isn't it? Without some kind of clear, consistent way to measure emissions, every company would just be making up its own rules. It'd be chaos. You have no way to compare progress, track if things are getting better, or hold anyone accountable. We'd literally just be comparing apples to oranges across the entire global economy. So what's the solution? Well, it's actually something businesses already understand perfectly: accounting. Think about it. We have universal standards to track every dollar and cent. It only makes sense that we need the exact same thing for our environmental impact: a shared common language for carbon. And that need for a common language, well, it leads us straight to the organization that created it. Let's talk about the global standard, the GHG Protocol. So what is the GHG Protocol? It sounds a little technical, I know. But put simply, it's the world's most widely used set of rules for measuring greenhouse gas emissions. It's not just one document. It's more like a huge library of standards, tools, and guides that make sure everyone is doing the math the exact same way. Here's probably the best way to think about it. The GHG protocol is basically the GAAP of carbon accounting. For anyone in finance, GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles, are the non-negotiable rules that make sure financial reports are consistent and trustworthy. The GHG protocol does that exact same job, but for environmental reporting. It's the trusted foundation. And its credibility comes from some serious heavy hitters. The protocol is a partnership between two major global organizations, the World Resources Institute and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Together, they provide the standards and tools that have become the absolute bedrock for pretty much every corporate climate program out there. It's all about making sure we're speaking the same language. Okay, so we know what the protocol is. Now let's get into the how by taking a look inside its key corporate standards. Now, the protocol offers a few different standards, but for businesses, these two are the big ones. On the left, you've got the corporate standard. This is the big picture view. It's the step-by-step guide for calculating your entire company's carbon footprint. Then on the right, you have the product standard, which is way more granular. This lets you zoom in on just one product, like, say, a pair of sneakers, and measure its impact all the way from the raw materials to the day it gets thrown out. But here's the thing, the GHG protocol doesn't operate in a bubble. So for our fourth section, let's explore the supporting ecosystem and see how all these pieces fit together. This is a really crucial point. Think of the GHG protocol as the foundation of a house. It's the source code, if you will. But other major standards and platforms build on top of it to create this whole ecosystem for climate accountability. And a huge player in that ecosystem is ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. You've probably seen ISO 9001 on products before for quality control. That's them. They create globally recognized standards for just about everything. And yep, that includes climate action. Now, the key thing to get here is that ISO standards don't compete with the GHG protocol. Not at all. They complement it. They work hand in glove. For example, ISO 14064 lines up perfectly with the protocol's corporate standard. So what's the difference? Well, ISO standards are built for verification. A company uses the GHG protocol to do the math, and then they can use an ISO standard to get that math checked by an independent expert. It adds this extra layer of trust and credibility. So you've measured your emissions, you've even had them verified. What's the next step? Disclosure. It's one thing to calculate your impact, but it's another thing entirely to report it to the world. And that's where the leading platform, CDP, which used to stand for the Carbon Disclosure Project, comes into play. The workflow here is actually super straightforward. It's like a two-step dance. First, a company uses the GHG protocol as its how-to guide for crunching all the emissions numbers. Then, once they have that standardized data, they report it through the CDP platform. So the protocol is the instruction manual for the math, and CDP is the global stage where you share the results with investors, customers, and, well, everyone.
Okay, let's bring it all home. This gets us to our final and maybe most important section. Why does any of this really matter? Let's zoom out and look at the big picture.
So let's boil it all down. The GHG Protocol gives us the essential rules of the road. Standards from organizations like ISO come in to verify that you're following those rules correctly. And finally, disclosure frameworks like CDP provide the platform to share your results with the world. It's this entire system working together that takes us from vague promises to real, transparent, and consistent accountability. At the end of the day, getting a handle on these frameworks is the absolute first step for any organization that's serious about sustainability. It all comes down to that old saying, you can't manage what you don't measure. And now that we have this common language for carbon accounting, the question isn't really how we measure our impact anymore, it's what we're actually going to do about it.